What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Today we're taking a look at a really old cancelled champion from League of Legends that we briefly touched upon in the past, but I wanted to dive and take a really in-depth look on, and that is Gavid, the Plant King. Gavid the Plant King was first found in the beta files of the game, and he was one of the first champions to ever get cancelled in League of Legends. The reason given for his cancelling at the time was that his style just didn't fit into the game's artistic theme. And so today I wanted to explore his theme, his abilities, as well as the character concept that didn't make it into League of Legends, and maybe take a look at him from today's perspective and see what it would be like to maybe have him get released into the game today. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button or let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for some more videos. And this video is going to be sponsored by ProGuides.com. ProGuides is a guide website with the intention to helping you become the best player that you can be. They recently released a new and fun way to learn League of Legends. You can choose a course to study and earn points for answering questions with personalized data tracking. And you can also talk to a challenger player to get personalized help or ask questions 24/7 at any time using the website. Try it for free at the link in the description, and let's jump right into the video. Gavid the Plant King was one of the first champions ever designed to be released after the initial launch of League of Legends. Unlike most other champions designed during this period, a lot of them were inspired by or directly copied from Dota or some variation of a character in Warcraft 3, Gavid was a little bit more original in the sense that there isn't really a hero in Dota like Gavid. Gavid's title is very fitting to his gameplay, as he would essentially give life to other plants and kind of use plants and all sorts of effects like them in the game through his abilities. His visuals, however, were fairly basic. He's a green, tall, and thin, almost cactus-looking kind of tree-ish character with 2 long arms and 2 legs that kind of look like a dog's back legs. He's also got a lot of thorns on him, and his head looks like a tree branch rather than a head. We can kind of understand why it was cancelled for not fitting in with the game's artistic themes when you take a look at what happened during the 2010 Harrowing event. In the 2010 Harrowing map skin for Summoner's Rift, there's actually a coffin that contains Gavid alongside 2 other coffins, with Taboo and Everdrian, which were 2 other champions that were cancelled. This Easter egg was kind of seen as effectively sort of like the final nail in the coffin from Riot Games to tell players that these champions were cancelled completely and entirely. The beta game files about Gavid actually come from March 25th in 2009, which includes all sorts of information, some lore ideas, and actually some gameplay tips for Gavid as well. Gavid's lore was that he was born into the world as a tiny little sprout. He spent much of his life basking in the rich magical soil near Demacia. The fertile soil allowed him to grow at an incredible rate and turned him into a walking tree monster that can give life to other plants. In the Summoner's Rift, he was designed to be a caster mage type of character. He would damage his opponents or crowd control them from a distance. While bits and pieces of his abilities here and there were actually used in champions that got released later on, Gavid's abilities and gameplay as a whole is quite compelling and definitely interesting. And by the way, if you haven't figured it out by now, Gavid is a character who seemed to have some pretty heavy inspiration to Zyra, considering that she is essentially just a plant-like character, and as we take a look at the abilities, you'll probably start to see a lot of similarities between Gavid and Zyra's actual gameplay. So let's take a look at those abilities. Gavid's first ability, his passive, was called Vine Generation, and from what we know, this ability spawned small vines within a small area of Gavid every 2 seconds. There wasn't an icon or any actual art provided for this ability, but it was something that could be quite interesting, and his passive interacts quite well with all of his other abilities. So his next ability, Gavid's Q, was called Animate Thornspitter, and it let Gavid consume a vine that he targeted, turning it into a small plant that spit thorns at enemies nearby. Its stats were also in the game files. It had 200 hit points, 2 armor, and it was actually immune to magic damage and lasted up to 30 seconds. Definitely the interesting part is that they were immune to magic damage, meaning that although the health's kinda low, it could definitely cause some serious troubles to champions that focus on using magic damage and can't really use auto attacks. Definitely could make him a huge lane bully in the mid lane. Its icons seem to have been used in designing Zyra's and Maokai's icons later on. And, well, as you can see, this ability is actually very similar to Zyra's plants in general. Onto his W ability, it was called Animate Trapper. Gavid's W would let him choose a vine and cause it to explode into a mass of roots that would also entangle nearby enemies, and it would deal 50 damage every second until the effect of the entangle was over. As a reminder, entangle is the crowd control effect of a root, which makes champions unable to move or use movement abilities. This ability's icon was actually recycled for Baron Nashor's tentacle knockup effect, and it can still be seen in the game today. While this ability doesn't necessarily sound like much, it said it would deal 50 damage per second, although I'm not sure which level or rank of the ability that would be at. It probably would scale up or down depending on the rank in the level. You have to also remember that this is coming from a time back in the day when all sorts of champions in the game had crowd control effects that would last for as much as 4 or 5 seconds sometime, and most often at least 3 seconds. His next ability, his E, was called Animate Vitalis. This ability allowed Gavid to consume one of his vines and turn it into a Vitalis plant, which would restore health to nearby friendly units, which includes non-champions, minions, and pets. Vitalis plants restored health every 3 seconds with 100 hit points and lasted for 20 seconds, actually making it a very amazing healing ability considering the fact that you could get as many as 6 actual ticks of healing from just one plant. It was almost something like a redemption that just activates every 3 seconds, and also doesn't do damage though. Its icon was actually used as the icon for Crest of Nature's Fury buff, which was the green buff on the pre-update Twisted Tree line obtained by slaying the rabid wolf, which means it was removed from the game later, but it's definitely interesting to see how his kind of icons, I guess, managed to also make it into the game as well. And lastly, the coolest part, we have Gavid's ultimate, and this ability was called Entrench. Gavid would root himself for a few seconds, restoring hit points and immediately generating 7 extra vines around him, and gaining increased vine generation for his passive. Additionally, the next ability would animate all vines nearby rather than just the one targeted. Now this ultimate is definitely something that could be really crazy and super cool and would allow for so much unique gameplay and all sorts of crazy things, because he essentially had 3 majorly different ways to use his ultimate. He could just heal everyone on the team like a crazy, super awesome heal ult, or just something that roots everyone in just a crazy big radius, or just something that spawns like 10 crazy high damage plants that are all immune to magic damage, maybe for pushing a tower or something like that. The possibilities are endless, and this ultimate definitely causes him to have a really exciting and interesting overall kit in terms of how the mechanics interact with each other. And Gavid also, similar to a lot of old champions, had another unexplained 6th ability called Thorns Incinerate. And written after it, the description for this ability was just kill them all with righteous fire. Now there's no explanation about what this ability was or what it did, and a lot of these old champions from the game have these like random 6th ability in the game files, and I think most of the time it's because it was either a toggle effect or a second part of one of their already existing abilities, so this could perhaps have been a passive effect on his ultimate, or perhaps a second passive effect on his, well, passive. So moving on, based on his original kit, Gavid isn't necessarily a new champion or a new idea. There's definitely a lot of ways that you can tell that it's very similar to Zyra's kit in the game. Now obviously that's probably because Zyra took heavy inspiration from Gavid in her design. And I think other bits and pieces of his abilities and icons especially end up being onto other champions or just other areas in the game as well. And him also being a big tree with no distinct visuals doesn't really help him in any way, but we have to remember this is a champion that was made in 2009. That's almost 10 years ago. So I more so want to think of like a modern updated version of Gavid. You know, Gavid if he was released today, you know, if Riot decided to start working on him, you know, if Riot wanted to make him as a champion, they would have to give him some serious thoughts and improvement, a new fresh coat of paint, of course a much better model, and some additional new voice lines. For his visuals, they could honestly do almost anything though. They could change him into like a druid kind of tree mage or like another tree monster or something. Maybe that's a bit too similar to Maokai though. But his lore could be changed and his visuals could be updated to match it. And quite frankly, they do leave a little bit to be desired, even considering the fact that it was made in 2009. His gameplay though is definitely a pretty big shining gem that still holds up today in many ways. And because he has such a nice amount of utility and versatility, just by changing the numbers, Riot could make him a support champion, they could make him a tank, they could make him a mage, an anti-mage even, and so many more options too. You know, his E gives him some amazing healing potential, and his W is a great crowd control effect. His Q also gives him a nice amount of poke and could be a great counterpick to some mage champions especially. And as for his ultimate ability, I'm honestly such a huge fan of the design of this. It's not exactly that original anymore, and in many ways does feel somewhat similar to Zyra's design. However, the idea of this ultimate that just spawns like 10 plants instantly that you can use in 3 different ways and all sorts of combos and crazy effects and interactions is something that seems very exciting and interesting. And the idea of having this ultimate that can be used in 3 significantly different ways, although it might not be, the newest idea ever, it's definitely something that's really cool, and a lot of the changes to the rest of his kit have a really big impact because of the way that they're involved with his ultimate. Either way, that's kind of just some random thoughts and ideas that I wanted to take a look at. I personally love taking a look at these old canceled champions. It says so much about the design of League and interesting things that Riot Games used to do when it comes to designing champions and kind of stuff like that. Gavid's kit in general is one that I found to be particularly exciting and interesting. So if you enjoyed the video, definitely let us know in the comments below. Hit that like button. Maybe let us know which champion got canceled that you would like for us to take a look at in the future. And thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want, and I'll see you guys next time.